Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Sierra from Sierra T Designs, and today I have this fun maple leaf oxide card to share with you. So let's jump right in. So as usual, I like to cut down my cardstock. So I'm going to make a slimline card with this card. And I cut off 4 inches of a regular piece of cardstock, and then I'm scoring it at the 3.5 mark. So my card, when scored, will be 3.5 by 8.5 inches. That's my preferred slimline card. There's no right or wrong slimline card. As long as it fits in a number 10 business card, it works. Or business envelope, sorry. Then it works. But this is just my preferred way to do it. And I scored that in the center there, and I folded it and reinforced the score line. And I am going to cut down a piece of Neenah Desert Storm. This is what's going to be my panel for this card. And I'm going to cut it to be about 1/8 of an inch smaller than my base. And I am using the Deckled edge trimmer. I just wanted a little bit more texture in the background. So you could, of course, make it straight. This is just a little bit extra, and I have it. So I do try to use the things that I actually have, but I cut it down to be slightly smaller than my card base so that it has a little bit of a white border going around it. I just like the border look, which you guys know. And then I have the maple leaf from Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous. It's the Autumn Blueprints stamp set. And I'm using my Misti, so I've pulled out the foam that goes in the Misti so that I can use the red rubber stamps. And for the first 2, I'm going to stamp them on a piece of heavyweight vellum, and I'm going to white heat emboss them. So I inked it up with some Versamark ink. It's hard to see my piece of vellum in the Misti, but there is a piece there. And then I'm going to pour on my super fine detail white embossing powder. I'm really loving this. I generally would have used like a Brutus Monroe, and their embossing powder is amazing too, don't get me wrong. But I do find that the Ranger Superfine just works so well on detailed images. So with all these little lines and stuff on this stamp, I find that it works really well. And then I did also cut down and stamp out 3 of the maple leaves on to distressed watercolor cardstock. And I just cut down the ones you get in the pre-made package. I cut them down to fit the stamp. And then I stamped out 3 of those in Versamark Onyx black ink because we are going to do some ink smooshing. So I am now going to melt the embossing powder on the 2 pieces of vellum. I love vellum. I think that it's such a cool way to incorporate more of an image without kind of taking away from the other images, if that makes sense. Because I'm making a slimline card, and you guys know that I like to work in uneven numbers. I want 5 leaves, but I don't want all 5 leaves to be colored because I don't think that they would be as noticeable. So the vellum makes that just so much easier. So I brought out a replacement white mat for the glass mat. And yes, there is a mat to the right-hand side there, but that one actually helps me diffuse light so that it doesn't reflect off my glass mat and become really irritating in the video. So I have a second one so that I can actually use it with ink. And then I have 3 Oxide inks. I have Salvaged Patina, Speckled Egg, and Kitsch Flamingo. And I'm just going to kind of pounce my images into my ink there. And you saw that I added some water to add some movement to the inks as well. And then what I had left on my mat there, I just pounced my background into to add a little bit of extra color to the Desert Storm background. It's really hard to see it once I've added the images on top, but I know it's there, so I think it's a good way to use up some of the ink that was just sitting there. And then I am going to heat set in between my layers so that I can layer instead of having them blend. Because I did add water, they will have extra movement. And keep in mind that I'm going to do a few layers, mostly because a lot of the ink is on the outside of the leaf, and I'm going to fussy cut these out. So I need more ink colors actually inside the leaves. And it's hard for me to tell exactly where the leaf is when I'm pouncing it. So, I mean, you could have cut these out beforehand, but I actually found it easier to add the color before I trimmed them down. And I did actually leave them this size as well because I kind of considered re-stamping the black background or the black outline just to make it more stark. But in the end, I chose not to. I kind of liked it a bit muddied by the color sitting on top. So I ended up not restamping them, but you absolutely could have. And then here I'm going to fussy cut them out. I'm only going to show it to you for one of them. And I am going to leave a border around it. I think that extra color sitting on the outside looks really cool and I like it. So I'm going to leave a slight border around the image. So I'm not going to cut right up to the line. And I think that this is an image that really lends itself to that look. Simply because there's so many lines and so much detail going on that leaving a border kind of adds interest outside of where I've cut, which I think is pretty neat. So I'm just going to trim off the excess. And I used my CutterBee scissors for this. You could absolutely use like the mini snips, and I have them. I didn't want a serrated edge on the cardstock. I do find when I use my mini snips with the Distress watercolor cardstock, it ends up giving me a serrated edge and I didn't want that. So I kind of just didn't use them for this, but you could. And then I have them laid out on top of my Neenah Desert Storm panel there. And I kind of have decided how I wanted them to look. And this kind of gives you that breakup between the colored ones. Now, I did choose to color them all the same 3 colors. Of course, you could have done different colors and that would have drawn your eye differently. But I actually chose to do them in the same colors and then just have vellum in between them so that there was some separation between each leaf. So they were still all eye-catching, but they weren't fighting for your eye, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my thought process with the design here. And I did use my Barely Art glue just for that super fine tip because I find it's way easier to get a nice amount of glue on something that's a little bit more delicate. And the vellum ones, I really wanted to only have the glue right behind the white embossing. And for the third leaf, the one that's going to go in the center, the third colored leaf that's going to go in the center, I did add some thin 3D foam squares to it. And then I kind of try to decide if I wanted it on an angle or if I wanted it more straight up and down. And luckily I hadn't pressed it down, so I was able to kind of move it around a little bit to find how I liked it. In the end, I think I go pretty well straight up and down. So, but of course you could do anything. This is just for visual interest really. But I try really hard not to have any of the leaves going on the same angle because I find that then they're not quite as dynamic visually, if that makes sense. So I'm pretty excited with how this card turned out. It took a few minutes for me to kind of figure out what the heck I was doing. I know I wanted to use the maple leaf as I am Canadian, so maple leaves just have a soft spot in my heart, and of course, Tim Holtz products are just always stunning, but I kind of went back and forth. And then I brought in a sentiment from the Simon Says Stamp All Seasons Trees stamp set and just stamped down this, "Thank you for being you." I always need thank you cards. I think that they're one of my favorite things to send out. And I like to randomly send them to friends of mine and family members and whatnot. So thank you cards are just always wonderful to have in my stash. Then I brought in this gold palette and I just really wanted to add some splatter to the background. And here you see I even brought in my splat box and I still managed to get gold paint everywhere. So apparently I'm just a messy crafter. But I did mix it up and I'm using a fan brush to just splash it all over the background on top of everything. I wanted that kind of texture. I think that it looks really good with this style of a card. I love gold. I mean, I'm happy to put gold on all the things. And then I wanted to bring in a little bit more gold. So I brought in I believe this is a number 8 round brush. And I'm just going to go around all of the edges of the Neenah Desert Storm cardstock to add the gold paint there. And it's just honestly to kind of finish off the edges and kind of frame up the background. So it's a little bit extra. You could totally skip this step. I like to bring in gold in all its facets because I just love it so much. So totally extra though. Don't need to, but I have it and it was already mixed up, so why not bring in a little bit extra gold? So, and then I did set that aside to dry, and at this point it is dry, so I'm going to adhere everything down. And I did bring in my Nuvo Deluxe glue for this point. This is just, again, because I have both and because it's not as fine of a tip. So, and I did have a little bit of warping on my cardstock from when I got it wet. So I'm going to bring my Misti in to sit on top of the panel there to make sure it actually adheres down to the base. And this is just because it sits on my desk, so it's easy. And because I'm never done unless I add all the bling, I brought in some gold sparkle crystals from Studio Katia and just put a couple across the back. I think I put 7. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I put 7. I think. I don't even know how many I put on there, to be honest, you guys. Maybe I put 8. Oh, I better not have. You guys know how much I love the uneven numbers. I'm going to laugh if I put 8 on. I'm going to have to double check now. I think I did, actually. That's so funny. I never do even numbers, but that's okay. I might have to add one now that I've realized that I've only put 8 on there. Oh boy. And you can see in the inside, I just stamped the stamp a couple of times with the fun colors. All right, guys, that is the card that I have to share with you today. I hope that you like it. I think that it turned out really pretty. I'm pretty excited about how it turned out, actually. If you loved, you'd consider subscribing, leave me a like, leave me a comment, and I hope that you'll stop by again. Thank you so much, guys, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Bye-bye for now.